Hey there, and welcome to Star Trek Voyager, Across the Unknown. I grew up watching Star Trek Voyager. I think I started watching age 9, maybe age 10. So that has been about 27 years ago by now. I really love the show, and I was rather surprised, actually, to see a new game being worked on. Star Trek Voyager Across the Unknown. Now, as you can imagine, as Voyager was stranded in the Delta Quadrant, there was a lot to unknown, or a lot of unknown to discover, and that's what the game allows you to do. It takes you into at least the first episode arc, where you're going to be doing the same things, or, well, will you? You'll be making some choices related to the Caretaker episodes, episode 1 and 2 for Star Trek Voyager. This means that you'll be in charge of the ship. You'll be in charge of how crew members make actions, about how they interact with others. And that allows you to change some things. There has already been a hint on the Steam page that, well, that one episode with two Vics, how about you just keep them together? How about you just don't split Neelix and Tuvok up and just keep it as one? It's just one of the many choices that you're going to be able to make. Now what you're looking at currently is the demo. Now what you're currently looking at is the demo. This is part of the Steam Next Fest, and this means that you can play the demo and basically play the first hour or so of the game, depending on how quickly you go through it. This is a demo, and as such, it is not the full version of the game, nor can it be. There are things that are not unlocked yet, there are things that might not be fully working yet, and of course, there are things that they just don't want to give away yet. What I can already see are some good things that I really like, and some bad things. Now, let's start out with the good things. What this game has for me is that Star Trek Voyager feel to it. It does, even though it's just bubbles that you get to read yourself, for now, it has that Star Trek Voyager isolation. Like, okay, we're out here all by ourselves, the ship is badly bruised and battered, and you get to choose how to fix things up, how to treat the crew, how to do everything. You basically, to some extent, get to be Captain Janeway, and you get to figure out how you want to run your ship. Especially when you're building out the ship and repairing the ship, you get to figure out where certain rooms get to go. You could, if you wish to, turn Voyager into a warship and just pepper it with multiple torpedo control rooms or phaser rooms and make sure that the ship gets a heck of a lot more punchy in combat, at the expense of other things. You might not do as well in exploration. There was even a bit of Borg tech that I was able to figure out, or at least there are hints that there will be Borg technology available in the full game. So those are choices that you can make, and that freedom to play as you want is stuff that I really appreciate, because it makes it feel a bit like a game called Ixion, which I covered back in the day. That had you playing as a big moving city, where you too had to manage basically everything. You had to do resource management, you had to manage the expectations of your crew, and in that game it had various different factions. In this game you don't have that as much. You do have to keep in mind the morale of the crew, because if the crew decides that there isn't that much hope, they might not want to continue with the journey. They might not perform their duties as well, and that is definitely going to come back to bite you, both in exploration, research, weaponry, everything. So keep the crew happy. Of course, this being a game, you can make some rather different choices relative to what the show had you do. I've already hinted on this with two Vics, but of course there are many different choices that you can make. Unfortunately, the demo doesn't show that many of them yet, but it does give you a hint saying, hey, why not blow up the Caretaker array? Or why would you? Because you can use the Caretaker array to go home. And basically turn Star Trek Voyager into a 2-episode series, because, hey, if they're home, then where's the rest of the story, right? That's what Star Trek Voyager was. It was 7 years or 7 seasons of exploring the Delta Quadrant and trying to get back home. But why would you take the difficult route? Why would you risk your crew if you could just hit the escape button and have the Caretaker array send you home? So that is one of the choices that you can make. and basically end the series before it begins. Now, there are some bad things, or things which, after reading some of the Steam discussions and seeing some of the parts that the devs have answered, I do understand. Star Trek is a very difficult IP to work with. This means that it is sometimes unclear who holds the rights to certain parts of Star Trek. And the Star Trek music, especially the Star Trek Voyager music apparently, is one of those parts. So, yes, Star Trek music would be required for a Star Trek game, right? It is something that you would expect to have in there. Unfortunately, as it turns out, Star Trek music would be as expensive as the whole development of the game. The whole budget of the game would go into the music and we would have no game. So that sucks. It, of course, does take away from the atmosphere, because not only do we not have any Star Trek music, at the moment, and this is something that could change, but I kind of doubt it, there is no voice acting. You are just reading text bubbles. You are just reading what's going on the screen and making your decision based on that. This takes away from immersion. Because of course I would love to have the voice of Captain Janeway or Tuvok or Chakotay or, I don't know, maybe when you get to Borg space, eventually have 7 of 9 or the Borg Queen on there. Sadly, at the moment, that is not part of the demo. And based on what I've been seeing, I don't think that's going to be part of the full game either. So that makes me a bit sad. Then again, once you get used to just reading it, and if you have seen enough of Star Trek, then you can probably figure out what the voice bubbles would sound if you were to have them in your head read out by Ensign Kim or Tom Paris or whoever is doing any of the voice acting, or rather talking in the game at the moment. The same can be said for the effects. Star Trek has very typical effects for phasers, for photon torpedoes, for shields, for turbo lifts, everything. It has that, you know, the Star Trek feel to it. And I haven't really seen many sound effects like that in the game. So that is something too that kind of takes away from it. But for me, it wasn't so critical that I thought, nah, this isn't Star Trek. Because the rest of it just works. You got your warp core, you got your phasers, you got your torpedoes, you have a holodeck to keep the crew happy. When it comes to food and, for example, food production, you can have the hydroponics bay, at least eventually if you decide to research that. You got your transporter room. All of these things are definitely Star Trek. However, it is Star Trek which is on mute to some extent. And you may have noticed that the music that I have put under this video is also not Star Trek. Again, because I, certainly as a content creator, don't have the budget to add Star Trek music. And the game has audio, but apparently that too has some copyright challenges. So the amount of audio, which, yes, is critical when you're telling a story, when you're trying to immerse people into a game, it's sad that we don't have that. Now, let's have a bit of an in-depth look about what the game is and explore some parts of it. Let's start off with how you manage the ship. Voyager was displaced by the caretaker array, and it got into the Delta Quadrant in a pretty bad state. That means you're gonna have to fix it. And many parts of the ship need your attention. You're gonna have to make choices. Not everything is gonna be able to get fixed at once. Now, you start out with one repair team, and as you eventually unlock, or let's say repair the engineering office, you'll be able to get a second repair team. That means you can start to fix up rooms at a slightly better pace, and every room that you repair / clear of debris is going to allow you to either use that room again, or to get some resources from the room that you have just cleared. So let's say you get some resources from the rubble. Based on the amount of rooms that you have available, I'm somewhat surprised that the ship's still functional, at least as good as it is, because it seems that Voyager was almost empty. Then again, I suppose in some parts of the series you could go, well, I guess the ship was almost empty. Anyway, so long as you can keep your ship in a good operating state, that is great. And what do you need for that? Resources. And these are the Star Trek resources. You got your deuterium, you got your titanium, you have food, which is not particularly Star Trek, but it is a rather important resource to keep everybody happy. You can generate your food for you using replicators. That can be done. But that takes energy. So that's where your deuterium, which fuels the warp core, goes. All of these things are going to require you to choose. How do you want to play? Do you want to go for a more militaristic version of the ship? Do you want to go for a friendlier version that might focus on science a bit more? You got the choice. But you don't get that many resources. So pick wisely. Thankfully, you can gather a decent amount of resources. At least the base resources, such as deuterium. Those can be had by flying over to any of the planets in a sector where you're in, and just going out there in either, for example, if it's a shipwreck, trying to take it apart, or blow it up with a photon torpedo and basically hoover up everything that's left. Again, how you operate with that is yours. That choice is yours, but some choices are affected by what sort of gear you have on the ship. If you have, for example, a better stellar cartography, you can figure out what systems or what resources are in the next system over, which is very handy to have. When it comes to combat, that is an interesting one. Because combat it's semi-autonomous, as they say. The way that it works is, well, it's a bit dumbed down, if you will. You're not directly flying the ship. This is not Star Trek Bridge Commander where you are doing everything. You give orders to, for example, keep your bow towards the enemy. Or to rather keep the bow away from the enemy because the shields on that side have already gone down. You get to decide what targets you want to go, or rather what systems aboard a target you want to go after. And when, if any, you want to use your torpedoes. Your crew also have various abilities, and you can use those in combat, such as evasive maneuvers, maybe boosting the warp core to give your phasers some extra oomph. Those choices are going to be yours throughout the battle. So those are things that you can affect during combat, but this is not Star Trek Bridge Commander. You are not flying the ship yourself. You are the captain. So you're giving orders and sort of telling the crew what to do, not strictly how to do them. That might be somewhat disappointing, but I think for a game like this, it works. You're not really running the whole show, but you do affect the major decisions in the game. Crew morale is another very important thing. This is making sure that the crew is happy enough to do your bidding. If the crew morale falls to 0, you are most likely going to get kicked out as captain, and that means the game is over. There are various ways that you can improve morale, such as making sure that the crew has access to better food, but also giving them a place to sleep, because supposedly at the start of the game, Voyager has been so badly wrecked that all you gotta do is sleep in the corridors. They don't even have corridors anymore. Everybody's sleeping in corridors. All 50 people, which I thought was a bit low. The crew of Voyager was not 50, I think it was about 149, depending on, well, which season you were looking at. So, I'm not really sure how we're operating the ship with 50 crew, but okay, I guess in this game that's possible for now. But of course, as the ship grows, you're going to need more crew, which will also require more food, better quarters, and so forth and so on. Throughout the story options that you have, you can sometimes also improve the crew, or you can decide, well, I'm going to shoot my way out of this and crew be damned. If crew somehow gets injured, you can fix them up in the repair bay. All you have to do is state the nature of the medical emergency and the doctor will fix you right up. Aside from that, you have away teams. That's another mechanic. Sometimes you have a sort of mini adventure, so to speak. You decide who goes on the away team, and your choices there, or rather your choice for who goes on the away team, is going to be impacted by what you need. Sometimes you might need a bit more combat power, sometimes you might need a bit more diplomatic power, and sometimes you're going to need more engineering power. So who you send on the away mission is definitely going to affect the outcome, which can affect the amount of resources that you get or what sort of story options you get. So pick your people wisely before you go. And then as you go, you're going to have a sort of a check system which says, hey, you need to roll for, I don't know, 30. Your crew at the moment can roll, let's say, a 25. Sometimes you're going to get a pass, sometimes you're not. And if you don't, well, crew can get injured, and once again, you're going to have to return to Voyager and go back to the doctor. Supposedly, crew, and I'm not sure if it goes for heroes too, such as your officers, but crew can die. So please keep that in mind, and, well, if you lose a critical crew member, I'm not sure how you're going to be able to complete the game, or if the game will let you complete it. I'm not sure if heroes have plot armor or not, but that's something that I wasn't quite able to glean from the demo. As a whole, to conclude, I really like what I'm seeing. I was really hoping I could continue playing this for more than about an hour, but here we are. We'll just have to wait. Wait how long? That is the question, because the release date, at least on Steam, says coming soon. Yeah, soon is anybody's guess, so it could be as early as late 2025, it could be 2028, I don't know. Coming soon could be anything, so we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. I really like what I'm seeing, but I'm curious to see what you think. Let me know down below in the comments. What do you think of the game so far? And please check out the demo, linked down below in the description. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon for another video.